Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Crit Hit Reviews with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be talking about a rather particular game I've received a review key for, namely MorbidWare's The Textorcist, the story of Ray Bibia. And I do mean particular, given that it functions as a bizarre love child of typing Tutor x Touhou fanfics. But is The Textorcist a godly experience? Or will it leave you praying for deliverance? The story thus far. You are Ray Bibia, a private exorcist for hire, which more or less can be summed up as kicking ass in the name of the Lord and wandering the streets of Rome. Well, when there's a demon or spirit to exorcise. That said, it's not long before he winds up embroiled in a dark conspiracy that will force him to confront the sins of his past, as well as use a seriously outdated piece of crap computer. Cliff notes and tropes aside, I actually really dug the narrative of this game. The plot was fun to follow, especially because it never took itself too seriously. I genuinely found myself looking forward to seeing the chunks of story in the game, and not just because of the punchlines and lamp shading, but they really don't hurt. What's more, the few times the game does take a turn for the dramatic, it still manages to be entertaining and never really pulls players too long from the meat of the game. Which, speaking of, you are going to be typing. A lot. Whether it's to examine things, writing in a location name on the area map, or the elaborate exorcisms you'll be spouting off, almost everything in the Textorcist is done by typing commands. Except movement, thankfully. The result is that the hub areas have an almost retro text adventure feel to them, though there's thankfully not much guesswork involved there, except a few puzzles involving your in-universe junkie, Holy Veta PC. Which honestly serves as a pretty nice breather, given that when the game starts to thrust you into boss battles, which serve as the game's main attraction, things intensify rapidly. All of the game's bosses are multi-stage endurance matches, which see you typing up some fairly lengthy sentences in Latin, and sometimes English, while dodging wave upon wave of bullets. That said, it's at least partially forgiving, because if you do get hit by a bullet, it doesn't kill you. It knocks your book out of your hand. Only when you're bookless are your 3 hearts at risk, though a secondary dilemma occurs. See, if you take too long to retrieve your book, your current progress on the line of text you've been typing out is lost, which means you can't take your time to navigate the fields of bullets that are erupting around you to retrieve your book. And then factor that each of the bosses have some rather unique mechanics for their battles, which are specifically geared to mess with you in different ways, like spectral vomit temporarily blocking out the text you're typing out, thunderous quakes rearranging the Latin phrases you were working on, and even a boss which required me to type fast enough to take down his phases or he just killed me. I mean, with all that said, it's a genuinely fun and challenging experience, though I will say that using the controller might be the better choice, if only because it limits the possible inputs for the exorcism to 2, whereas using a keyboard means you have to manually type in the phrases while dodging projectiles, which saw me henpecking keys one at a time in some of the more frantic moments when I had no breathing room to just sit there and hammer out a literary counter-assault. Well, except those late-game moments where I was demoning out, since that meant I just got to mash keys and focus on dodging. But I'll avoid talking too much about that, since spoilers, but suffice to say, it's fairly straightforward and also fun. So when it comes to the Textorcist's soundtrack, I did not expect the music in this game to be anywhere near as awesome as it turned out to be. Like, the soundtrack for this game just had me extremely pumped, even as I was busy trying to rapid-fire type Latin and engage in some bullet-dodging ballet. I was in love with this soundtrack, and the lead-up to some of the areas is just great as well. On a purely aesthetics level, there was also a lot I enjoyed in the Textorcist, from the overall setting to the sprite work of the various bosses you encounter. And I definitely dug the demonic forms of the later ones. There's a frickin' Tengu, it's great. And creepier things. And I can also appreciate the fact that the projectiles and the attack patterns also ended up looking fairly distinct as well, and weren't just an overwhelming mess. I guess that's sort of one of the high points of a lot of bullet hell games when they're done right. Man, so this game definitely was something unique, and I found myself engrossed in the weirdness it presented. I mean, admittedly, it managed to arrest my attention from the moment the intro theme kicked in, but the fact that its storyline, gameplay, and presentation were on point meant it kept me there, to the point that I binged the game from one end to the other in a particularly long sitting. Sometimes it could be a bit frustrating. I admit I sort of suck at bullet hell sometimes, a lot of times. But I was able to ultimately persevere and triumph through the game's various stages, which, I mean, fair warning, and I should mention it now, this game is hard and there are no difficulty options. Like none. It starts out tricky and ramps up from there. All the same, I found the journey worthwhile, both to see what varied challenges the bosses would have for me, as well as to just find out more about Ray and why he was so damn grumpy. And at the end of my journey, I wasn't disappointed. The Textorcist may be a niche title, extremely so, even, but in my opinion, it's just as solid a hit and definitely worth a playthrough if you're a fan of bullet hells. Anyways, if you're still here, then I'd like to thank you folks for both tuning in and staying till the finale. Whether you agree or disagree with my thoughts, I'd love to hear from you folks in the comments, and if you just have anything else to add. And for those who are interested in more indie reviews or interviews with the developers, feel free to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified when we have a new release. Lastly, there's also a link to our cozy Discord, both in the description and the banner, which I am somewhat obligated by Lovi to go and mention, because otherwise they're going to be very disappointed at me. Anyways, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks. See ya.